Hello, everybody, and welcome to my NFL Week 3 recap. If you don't want to be here, then that's too bad. I'm going to do this because I don't want to get evicted from my apartment and lose all my money, so let's go. Bills versus Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. This was actually a really competitive and entertaining game by both teams. And Buffalo took over in the fourth quarter, and I'm going to explain why. Miami was trying to tie the game with less than 5 minutes left, but Tua threw a terrible interception to Terrell Bernard. And Buffalo kicked the game-winning field goal, quote-unquote, to seal the 31-21 victory for the Bills. What happened to taking over the AFC, Tyreek? And do you guys remember when Tyreek Hill scored a touchdown in this game, and immediately after commercial break, they were talking about his domestic violence? That was kind of uncalled for, and also kind of understandable because, well, Tyreek Hill is a horrible person. But as for stats, Josh Allen had another awesome game, 213 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. And James Cook also had a really good game with 19 carries for 108 yards and a touchdown. Miami, I know you guys are coming up with thousands of excuses why you guys lost this game, but you guys actually played really good until the fourth quarter. But here's the big question. When will the Dolphins decide to finally get rid of Mike McDaniel? I mean, you can do worse than him, sure, but you can't get anywhere with him. In my opinion, he should probably be gone by week 10, at the minimum. Vikings versus Bengals. This game was all about Isaiah Rodgers. He was the biggest star on the Vikings. He had 1 interception and 2 forced fumbles, one of which was picked up for a touchdown. But as for the Vikings offense, Carson Wentz, who is a quote-unquote Super Bowl champion, had 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jordan Mason had 16 carries for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. But as for the Bengals, we played like hot garbage. Jake Browning had 2 ugly interceptions. And he didn't score a touchdown until the fourth quarter. And our rushing leader was Samaje Perine, who had 4 carries for 21 yards. And Jamar Chase only had 5 receptions for 50 freaking yards. I mean, I'm really not complaining that we lost because Minnesota is a really good team. But I just hated that we only can manage to score 10 points. I just felt embarrassed, to say the least. But congrats, Minnesota. Jaguars versus Titans. I'm going to be honest with you. I really didn't watch much of this game. I really didn't. It was a game that I would kind of care less on who wins and loses. But judging by what I see, CJ Stroud played like garbage. 204 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. 2 of those interceptions, by the way, were horrible. Horrible. Outside of that 50-yard bomb to Nico Collins, he was horrible. And by the way, big props to Nico Collins for a great game. 8 receptions, 104 yards, and a touchdown. But as for the Jags, Trevor Lawrence was kind of hit or miss in this game. I mean, he had over 200 passing yards, but he didn't throw a touchdown pass. And he threw an interception. But Travis Etienne, though, had a good game with 16 carries for 56 yards and a touchdown. So the Jags improved to 2-1, and the Texans are dead last in the AFC South. Such a shame. Titans versus Colts. I think it's time to take this Colts team seriously, but I'm not ready to call them Super Bowl contenders yet. I need to wait a couple of more weeks to really buy into this team. Because remember, the Panthers started off 3-0 in 2021, and they lost a ton of games and missed the playoffs. So be cautiously optimistic, people. As for the Colts offense, Daniel Jones had over 220 passing yards and a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor had 17 carries for 102 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Michael Pittman Jr. had 6 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. As for the Titans, Cam Ward and Tony Pollard tried to do everything that they could, but it wasn't enough to beat the Colts. The biggest culprit was their defense, who gave up 41 points to the Indiana Jones-led Colts. But anywho, congrats to the Colts on a really good start. And if they keep playing this well, they could possibly win the AFC South. But don't count on it, though. Commanders versus Raiders. Washington unsurprisingly defeated Las Vegas, and in dominating fashion too. But you won't believe this, but Geno Smith played a really great game in a loss. But the biggest star for the Raiders was surprisingly Trey Tucker, who had 8 receptions for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. And one quick note, Raiders, please give Ashton Genty more carries. You guys are barely even using him on offense. 17 carries for 63 yards? Come on, guys. You could do better than that. He is the most hyped up running back prospect we've ever seen since Saquon. And you guys are barely even using him. Use him more, damn it! As for Washington, I don't really have anything to say. I mean, the only memorable thing in this game was Marcus Mariota running out of bounds and running into Dan Quinn and giving him a broken nose or something. Still, it was an ugly scene. But anyways, congrats to Washington, and for Las Vegas, sucks to suck, I guess. Eagles versus Rams. This is easily the best game of the week. Heading into halftime, LA was up 19-7, and Philly really couldn't get anything going on offense, because Jalen Hurts was kind of playing a little rattled in this game. But then the third quarter happened. After Kyren Williams scored a touchdown pass, which is really surprising, Philly took over. Dallas Goedert scored a touchdown to make it 26-14. And then A.J. Brown finally got a touchdown this season to make it 26-21. LA tried to score a field goal, but it was blocked by Jalen Carter. And then in the fourth quarter, Devontae Smith scored a touchdown to make it 27-26 Philly, but they failed the 2-point conversion to give LA one last chance to win the game. They marched down the field and got into field goal range, and then it happened. The kick was blocked by Jordan Davis, and he returned the blocked field goal 61 yards to score a touchdown to seal the 33-26 victory for the Eagles. After this performance, I think we should put more respect on Jalen Hurts. I mean, I'm not an Eagles fan, but I have a lot of respect for the guy. He won a Super Bowl, he does his job well in the Philly offense, and he just gave Philly life after they were down 26-7. And he scored 3 unanswered touchdowns to give Philly the win. And I know Philly was bailed out big time by the blocked field goal, but still. Bottom line is that Jalen Hurts did his job to give Philly the win and remain undefeated. So, good game for the Eagles and good game for the Rams. Panthers versus Falcons. Atlanta, what in the living hell? How on earth do you not score a single point in this game. And I wouldn't mind if you guys lost by 3 or something like that. But 30-0. That offense was putrid. You guys were doing the same play calls. Check down, hand the ball off to Bijan. Check down. Michael Penix Jr. had 172 passing yards and 2 interceptions, one of which was a pick 6. And as for John Parker Romo, he missed 2 field goals in this game. He had one good game against the Vikings and then immediately crashed back down to earth. I think it's time for you guys to get a new kicker. Again! Congrats! You guys are screwed. But anyways, as for the Panthers, Bryce Young, he had a respectable game. 121 passing yards and a rushing touchdown. So, yeah, next. Patriots versus Steelers. New England's, you guys just shot yourselves in the foot like multiple times. You guys committed 5 turnovers, 4 fumbles, and 1 interception. You guys just literally handed Pittsburgh the win on a silver platter. But shout out to Hunter Henry, though, who had 8 receptions for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. As for the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers had over 130 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. Jaylen Warren led the team in rushing and receiving with 18 carries for 47 yards in rushing and 5 receptions for 34 yards in receiving. And for the Steelers' defense, they had a really good game against the Patriots, especially TJ Watt, who had 2 tackles and 2 sacks. And also, let's not forget Brandon Eccles, who had an interception off of Drake May. So congrats to the Steelers, I guess, even though I still hate them. Browns versus Packers. Green Bay, how did you lose to Cleveland? How and why? You guys forced multiple punts in the first half. And I know Cleveland has a really good defense. I know from experience. But still, how? But anyways, outside of the punting contest for the first 3 quarters, the fourth quarter had a lot of excitement. After Green Bay was up 10-0, Cleveland kicked a 35-yard field goal to make it 10-3. And then they got the ball back, and Quinshon Judkins scored a rushing touchdown. He should be in jail, but whatever. To make it 10-10. And Green Bay marched into Cleveland territory to try to set up Brandon McManus with a field goal attempt with less than a minute left, but it was blocked. And Cleveland got the ball on their own 48 to try to set up for a game-winning score. Joe Flacco set up Andre Schmidt with a 55-yard field goal, which it was good to give Cleveland the upset win over Green Bay, 13-10. Buccaneers versus Jets. This was a really entertaining game. It looked like it was going to be a Buccaneers blowout, but the Jets would not quit. And I will give Tyrod Taylor major props for putting up a really good effort and keeping New York alive. And the excitement really happened in the fourth quarter. When Tampa was up 26-20, they were trying to go for a field goal to make it a 9-point lead, but the kick was blocked, and New York grabbed the ball and scored on a block field goal touchdown to give the Jets a 27-26 lead with less than 3 minutes left. And that was enough time for Baker Mayfield to let a really clutch game-winning drive to set up Chase McLaughlin with the game-winning field goal as the clock hit 0 to give Tampa the 29-27 victory. But anyways, this is a huge win for my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield was once again clutch. Emeka Buka is the current favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And Chase McLaughlin is one of the clutchest kickers in the NFL. And I'll give him props for having the same name as me. But anyways, go Bucks, baby! We are 3-0! Chargers versus Broncos. This was a really entertaining game between two AFC West teams. It was back and forth the entire way through, and the biggest star of the game was Justin Herbert, who had 300 passing yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Even though the interception kind of doesn't really make his stats look really impressive, but he actually played a really good game. He had a beautiful touchdown pass to Keenan Allen in the fourth quarter, and with the game tied 20-20, he set up Cameron Dicker with a game-winning field goal as the clock hit 0 to seal the 23-20 victory over the Broncos. The Chargers are now 3-0, and all those wins came against division rivals, which is the Chiefs, Raiders, and Broncos. And if they keep playing this well, they could possibly win the AFC West. If only Boltman was here to see this, he would have been so proud. Seahawks versus Saints. Who would have saw this coming? Seattle kicked the ever-living snot out of the Saints, and it wasn't really close, and largely boring if you're a Seahawks fan. The biggest stars for the Seahawks offense was Sam Darnold with 218 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, Kenneth Walker III with 16 carries for 38 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Jackson Smith-Njigba with 5 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. And as for the Saints, they were once again horrible, and Spencer Rattler still hasn't won an NFL game yet. So, yeah, next. Bears versus Cowboys. Dallas lost to the Bears. That's hilarious. But anyways, the biggest star of this game was Caleb Williams, who had 298 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. And as for Rain Dakota Prescott, that's his real name, by the way, he had 251 passing yards, which is impressive, but he also had 2 interceptions. And CeeDee Lamb is injured, and he will miss 4 to 6 weeks. And you know what that means, Dallas front office. You have to trade him. I mean, that's the only reason why you guys got rid of Michael Parsons. But also a big shout out to Luther Burton. 49ers versus Cardinals. This was a really competitive game between two NFC West teams trying to fight for the crown of the NFC West. And it was San Fran who came out victorious. It was back and forth the entire way through, and McCorkle Jones set up his kicker for the game-winning field goal to give the Niners a 16-15 victory over the Cardinals. But not only does this loss suck for the Cardinals, but it gets worse. James Conner suffered a season-ending foot injury, and his season is pretty much over, so that's a huge loss. But hey, they still got Trey McBride. He's really good. But anyways, on to the next game. Giants versus Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. This was probably one of the worst primetime games that I've ever seen. Both offenses were terrible. Terrible. Especially the Giants. Mr. Unlimited had 2 interceptions in this game and is now being benched for rookie Jackson Dart. Russ, please, for the love of humanity, please just retire. Just retire. Go spend time with Sierra. Do literally anything that isn't playing football, because you're not even good anymore. As for the Kansas City Chiefs, the biggest moment of this game was when Travis Kelce and Andy Reid got into a heated argument. And you know this isn't the first time that this has happened.
And this is what happens when you win multiple Super Bowls and you star in a movie that nobody in the world wanted you to be in Happy Gilmore 2, and you constantly keep getting into heated arguments with your head coach, and you punch a teammate at practice and date the most famous person in the world and tell yourself, man, I am a great human being. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to explode. But anyways, as for the game itself, it was really misleading because I thought we were in for an entertaining finish because KC couldn't capitalize on their possession of the football. They were literally giving New York 4 chances to potentially tie the game, but they just keep shooting themselves in the foot. And Russ was the biggest culprit. He had 2 interceptions. 2. And outside of Cam Scattaboo, the Giants team was horrible. Horrible. Ravens versus Lions on Monday Night Football. This was another entertaining game of the week. And you won't believe this, but Lamar Jackson had really good stats in a loss. It almost makes me feel bad for Lamar Jackson. He did his job well. He scored 3 touchdowns. He did all that he could, but he got let down by his teammates.
But the Ravens were no match for Dan Campbell's Blue Kitty Cats. Jared Goff threw for 200 passing yards and a touchdown. David Montgomery had 12 carries for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. And also shout out to Jahmyr Gibbs, who also had an awesome touchdown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown with 7 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. And the biggest moment in this game was in the fourth quarter when on 4th and 2, Dan Campbell decided to go for it. And Jared Goff threw a deep pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and it was complete for a first down, and Detroit later scored to seal the win for the Lions. And honestly, I'm really happy that Lions went for it on a 4th down. And I know they do that recently, but I feel like a lot of teams in the NFL should try to go for it on 4th down. Well, 4th and short if I wanted to be more specific. Because a lot of teams usually don't want to go for it because it's too risky, but it would make it more entertaining if you go for it instead of punting like a bunch of babies.
But anyways, it was a huge win for the Lions, and it was a tough night for the Ravens. And they dropped to 1 and 2. And please, Ravens, please beat the Chiefs next week. We are counting on you.